Welcome to the Overrated Experience Sports Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Blondin. Welcome to another episode as we dive into the world of sports gambling, sports news, sports everything. If you're joining this Overrated Experience, you're joining us because you're not only looking for picks for NFL Sunday or NBA, NHL action, you're looking to share, hear wins, losses, bad beats, big underdog wins, big parlays. We are the Square Nation. We are the folks that sign up for these betting accounts, bet with our hearts, sometimes don't bet with our minds. And again, this is for you, the listener. And this is the kind of sports betting podcast you're going to get. You're going to get the ups and downs, and hopefully more ups than downs. But, you know, as Square bettors, a lot of it's downs, and we learn our lessons. So as we dive into this episode, I want to remind you that we want as many folks following us on Twitter at Overrated Experience is found at Overrated, EXPER2 at, well, it's not Twitter, but it's at Overrated, EXPER2 to follow us on Twitter. Want to hear your stories, want to hear your bad beats, want to hear any lessons you've learned, any plays you got coming up this weekend. And as we lead into the Super Bowl, I want to hear about some of the traditions maybe you have, some of the parties you've thrown, wild times, everything you can think of. It's open season on sports betting. Now, what you're going to hear this episode, again, we're going to focus on predominantly NFL action as we wind up NFL playoff repeat myself, NFL playoff action, but playoffs are wrapping up. We're down to the conference finals, AFC Championship. We have the Kansas City Chiefs hosting the Cincinnati Bengals. We also have the Philadelphia Eagles hosting the San Francisco 49ers. And we'll get there in a moment, but we're going to expand the podcast after football season to dive into a few more sports beyond football, but nothing's king, baby, but football. Football's the story, and that's just the way it is in the sports betting world. So just to get going, I want to kick off with a shout out to the team of Washington. Listeners out there that have been following the Overrated Experience for a few weeks now, shout out to you. Thanks for following the podcast. And what I'll do is if I find some different cities, whether it be Canada or the US, I'll shout you out in the podcast. So please tune in, share. Please share this podcast. Get people to sign up on on Twitter. Let's grow it. Let's see what we can do and let's make this bigger than it is today and keep it growing. So just some sporting news to kind of touch base on. A lot of action that's kicking off through the weekend. So NBA, NHL action. What sucks is that the EPL, English Premier League, is not in action. It's FA Cup season. That is the English Football Federation Association internal tournament where you have teams that are lower, like in the Premiership, in Championship, in League One, League Two, that are all in a giant tournament, which is actually pretty cool when you come to think about it, because you might have teams like Liverpool and Manchester United playing, a men's league team that just happens to go on a run, but eventually gets to a point where they're playing one of these larger teams. So that's what's happening this weekend. I have not dove into that. There's probably value there. You really got to understand which of the top-notch teams, what lineups are setting. So I don't know if I'll be touching that, but going into the weekend, Bundesliga is back. A German soccer, great to bet, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, Saturday mornings. Check it out. You'll have fun looking at that. We also have Italian and other leagues happening, so keep on top of that. Fun. Always good to get your morning started, get that cup of coffee going, and get going on the weekend and make some money. PGA action, Farmers Insurance tournament going on. A little unique. It's a Wednesday to Saturday tournament. So Saturday will be its conclusion. Currently, Sam Ryder's, after day one, actually day two now, it's Thursday, or end of Thursday, is minus 12 three-shot leader. We'll see how he does the next two rounds. If you're inclined to bet some golf. And other golf news. If you've been following, there is growing hatred between PGA Tour members and Live Tour golf members. And it's all coming together. It's like a WWE pay-per-view. It's building up. There's let me flip it to like a Conor McGregor kind of UFC build where John Rahm walks over to, John Rahm is part of the Live Tour, walks over to Rory McIlroy and his caddy and just to say hello at the Farmers Insurance, and shakes the caddy's hand, Rory McIlroy's hand, and then I guess goes to approach Rory McIlroy, and Rory McIlroy ignores him And and as John Rahm is walking away, he flicks a tee at him, a live tour tee at him, flicks it screw you. Here's the flip of the tee, and it's left to us to decide who's in the wrong here. But when Rory McIlroy was talking to the press, he just remembered that John Rahm has sued the PGA Golf Tour. I can't recall exactly why. And I think it has to do with either FedEx points or, competing. It's something to do with the conflict, obviously, between PGA and the LIV Tour. And John Rahm included Rory McIlroy in that lawsuit. And Rory was talking about being served during Christmas dinner with his family, that he needed to be a part of this class action lawsuit, or a lawsuit, whatever the definition of the legal term that was occurring here. So you kind of think about it, like, what world is John Rahm living in, that why would Rory McIlroy be shaking hands, bumping fists and whatever, So interesting stuff. And as it leads to April, we got the Masters, baby. The Masters. That is the BLN tournament. That is usually Tiger's house, but obviously Tiger is, kind of on the back nine of his career, if not closer to the 18th. But should be interesting, especially if a LIV Tour member starts, taking the lead, and we got PGA versus LIV, and this is where you got to get on board right now with the betting. Check it out. Get ready for the Masters. Let's go. Other sporting news includes weird incident happened on Wednesday in the NCAA basketball game. Laloya, I'm going to screw up the names here. Laloya Duquesne. I got that wrong. But during the game, there was, you're watching the game. If you've seen this on Twitter, you see a highlight of a guy walking on the court. It looks like an Uber delivery guy looking to deliver food, as he walks on the court trying to find who he's supposed to, I guess, get the food to. And just a funny clip. Check it out on Twitter. I believe I just read, it turns out that this was a joke, and this is kind of a setup. So it's not really a legit Uber Eats delivery guy, but nonetheless, take a look at it. If let's look at the situation here. You're gonna have a joke, because everything's on film, right? It's a joke. Let's have everybody mic'd up. Let's view it. But what part do you decide? Well, I could walk on the court. I could pretend I was an Uber Eats, a delivery person. I could interrupt this basketball game. You know what I also could? Is scare these guys on the floor that I'm up to no good. I have something in my pocket. I am going to do something bad. What kind of moron, or what kind of society are we looking at where this is funny? I mean, I'm bringing it up. So you know what? Maybe I'm part of that society where this is the audience they're looking for to kind of talk about this stuff. But it just makes you think, like, I know funny's funny, but what line do you or do you not cross? But check it out. Give me your thoughts on Twitter. Again, overrated, EXPER2 on Twitter. Just a lot of NFL news as well. Coaching carousel, as we expect throughout the offseason, and there's more to come. This is just the beginning. So, Frank Reich fired mid-season with the Indianapolis Colts, takes on the Carolina Panthers head coaching role. Now, this is a good pickup. I like Frank Reich. I think Frank Reich is a good coach, and I think he came aboard in Indianapolis when Andrew Luck was there, franchise quarterback, and was, if somebody wants to retire, they retire. Who cares? Andrew Luck decided he wanted to retire, but it put Frank Reich in a situation where they had to put or find, Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, and a coach is dead without a quarterback that you're going to be able to rely on for multiple years. So Frank Reich, good coach, kind of got screwed over by the quarterback selection he had in Indianapolis. However, Carolina is in the same position. I got to imagine that either they've decided that they're going to start from ground up and draft a quarterback and let Frank Reich mold that quarterback, or there's got to be some sort of plan. I hope it's not desperate Frank Reich looking to take the first job available. I think that's a mistake, because I think if he does not get the results here in Carolina, this might be the last you see of Frank Reich as quarterback, and maybe back to the old OC offensive coordinator position he go. So watch out, Frank Reich, but I got your back here. I believe in you. Dan Quinn, highly sought after, former Atlanta Falcons head coach, current Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator. He has decided to stick with the Cowboys. What this means is that he got a phone call saying, hey, I'll pay you this X amount of money. Don't listen to any offers. And Dan Quinn probably played it well, going on multiple interviews with the Colts and several other teams. So he played the coaching chess financial game perfectly. Good job, Dan Quinn. Also, Bill O'Brien, former Patriots offensive coordinator, former Houston Texans head coach, former Alabama offensive coordinator, is back in the NFL with the New England Patriots back as offensive coordinator. Who did he coach as offensive coordinator? You guessed it. The man, the GOAT, Tom Brady. I think this is a good move for the Patriots, but also a sign that Bill Belichick is saying, hey, I fucked up this whole... let's not talk about who the offensive coordinator is. We'll have an unnamed kind of a committee, and Matt Patricia will be our guy with the pencil in his ear. That failed miserably. You have a young quarterback, probably a better idea, probably is a year, in the making. So, is this the downfall of Bill Belichick? I don't know. But things are kind of cracking there, and these are the kind of moves that you hope to improve it and admit you're wrong. And Bill Belichick, I'm hoping that's the case. So we'll see what happens. Also, Sean Payton, still out there, highly sought coach, former coach of the the New Orleans Saints, Super Bowl champion. He is absolutely on the sideline, taking phone calls. When he's got a Brinks truck coming to his house, no matter what's going to happen here, he holds all the cards. It's beyond money now for him. He is looking at the fine print of the contract that's being offered to him from whatever city, whatever team, and looking at the power. And he can say yay or nay, or just say, hey, I'm sticking with TV. I'll hold out for another year. He is holding all the cards. So the report here with Sean Payton was that he has interviewed for the Denver Bronco head coaching job. However, a report came out that Sean Payton was concerned about a power struggle that might be growing in the Denver Broncos ownership group, and he had to come out and refute that was the case, which makes you believe, like, what stories are true, what stories are not, what stories are a little true, what stories are a lot true. I don't know anymore, and I take it with a grain of salt when I read this crap. So I guess he knows, but that's a man in total control of his destiny. Nathaniel Hackett, failure as a Denver Broncos head coach. I mean, you can't, if you look in the dictionary and look at failure, and you look at, if you define as a head coach as a failure, Nathaniel Hackett's face is going to pop up. Okay? He's going to pop up because he failed miserably. Russell Wilson in Denver, and got fucking axed because he sucks. And he really butchered that season for the Broncos. They're in a tailspin right now again, looking for a coach, and they probably need desperately a Sean Payton. So he's now become the New York Jets offensive coordinator. What are the New York Jets going to do? Who did the New York Jets pick up? Well, they picked up the former offensive coordinator in Green Bay, Nathaniel Hackett, not the former Denver head coach. I think that I probably wouldn't even add that to my resume if I was him. I got to think that they are pursuing Aaron Rodgers at some point, and having Hackett there would probably make an easy fit if he happened to join the Jets. And really, the offense they would create would be very familiar to Rodgers. We'll see. Rodgers, I don't see any value of him going back to Green Bay if he's going to come back at all. Hey, he may retire. I don't think so. There's too much money to be made, and I think he's got the ego. He likes the spotlight. So where's he going to be? If I am a betting man, which I am because you wouldn't be listening to the podcast if that was not the case, is that he probably will, if moved, go to the Jets. However, I do think the team that probably is in the best position to get the most value out of Aaron Rodgers, and also for Aaron Rodgers to get the most value, I think the Las Vegas Raiders. You tell me if they didn't have solid quarterback play this year, that the weapons they have, they could not have gone on a run. I mean, the expectation was that they would go on a run, and I think that they got to make a bold move. And you know what? If you got to give up 2 first-round picks, suck it up for 2 years and do it, and see what happens. Quarterback, franchise quarterback, even though who's 40 years old, could make the difference and get it done. Have some balls. And one weird report, and you know what? May also be a second face when you see definition of failure as a head coach. Jeff Saturday is reported to be in the lead to keep and remove the interim tag for head coach for the Indianapolis Colts job. I don't know what I don't know what Jim Irsay is thinking. I think the problem is that he's the one doing the thinking, and the guy is going to be giving the yay or nay on the head coach. And he's an owner. He's a football fan. He's not a football guy. So I think that's a huge mistake. That he's probably looking at a guy he can trust. He can pick up the phone and give a call to, and maybe feels like he's part of the team, like day-to-day operation, by having a guy at the head coaching position that he knows and knows very well. And Jim Irsay's got a few issues at hand, and take a look at the story about why Josh McDaniels, current head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, the reported story to why he took the job and then bailed on the job before Frank Reich got in there. It's a certain visit to a certain home where maybe he had that Dumb and Dumber moment where banging on the door, everything okay in there? I'm shaving. And that's probably what happened. I'll let you figure out what that means. If you read the story, you'll absolutely understand. All right, so that's the world of news that we're going to go through this week. Also, I got to provide the experience I had last Sunday and Saturday on the 4 NFL matchups. Big learning lesson for myself here. Actually, I want to quickly go through each game and talk about those experiences and what I thought on the bets that I put in there. And there was some weeks, week previously, I felt on fire. I mean, a few losses here, but everything was going my way. I felt like a genius that I could predict, and I could see the angles where all these games would play out. And then this weekend happens where you just look like a fool and you go in the wrong pathway, and then suddenly your pockets are empty. So some of the observations here, starting with the Jacksonville-Kansas City game. Now, I had a lot of Kansas City action going on here. I had Kansas City total over 30, or 31. And I had the Chiefs at the 9.5. I had what else I have there? I had Trevor Lawrence over. I think it was 253.5 or 254.5 yards passing, and the idea was that Kansas City would jump in front and force Trevor Lawrence to go to the air. And how this played out was Kansas City started off well. But the ankle injury, the high ankle sprain that Patrick Mahomes experienced, that injury just changed this game absolutely all over the place. It was such a critical moment in this game that I think affected the bets in this game that I had, at least, and the takes I had in this. And so when I go through how I lost, I think that the play was the right play. The circumstances that turned out, I tip my hat and move on. And, my mind was in the right spot. My analysis, I believe, was in the right spot. I mean, the Chiefs were up by 10 points. The Jaguars get a late field goal because they wanted to save time on the clock and try for the onside kick to push it to 7 points, which screwed me over. Also, that ankle injury that Mahomes had, and Henny had to come in for a bit. Mahomes came back. You could tell, obviously, he was favoring the ankle. And I think, obviously, the KC offense did what it needed to do to get the win. They scored 27 points. But I think they would have been explosive and running up, the numbers, the score much earlier, much quicker, and longer instead of these short passes on one leg that Mahomes was doing. And that would have changed the complexion. I think they would have exceeded the 31 points. I think Trevor Lawrence would have had to go the air much faster. You could tell that the Jaguars started to push the ball downfield and go to the air later in the ball game, which I think would have changed. If Mahomes didn't get that ankle injury, they would have had to go to the air much earlier. So I think I had the right play. The situation with the ankle really was a bad beat for me. And oh well, that's the way. That's why they call it gambling. You either win or you lose. It doesn't matter how you get there. Giants, Eagles. If you listen to the podcast last week, I talked about how I believed that the Eagles were going to stomp the Giants. I felt that the win that the Giants had over the Minnesota Vikings was more of overvalue. I think a fraudulent win. I think everybody got excited that that Daniel Jones had a great game, which he did, but his competition was the Minnesota Vikings. When I watched the Minnesota Vikings on Thanksgiving night win the ball game, but limp by, and their defense could stop Mac Jones and the Patriots from lighting them up and whether it be running, passing, there's a problem there. And I think that same game happened with Daniel Jones, where he was overvalued. He played well, but I think it was because he was playing the Vikings, and it set up a 7.5 point spread, which I think right off the bat was, Eagles are going to stomp them. There's nothing saying that the Giants had a shot here. The Eagles handled the Giants earlier in the year in New York, and really that last game of the year, week 18 for the 17th game, I don't think it was a true reflection. The Eagles won that game, and I think they just wanted to get by knowing they needed a victory. So, Jalen Hurts was coming back from an injury. He looked great in this game, so I felt like a hero in this game, predicted it on record. Let me rewind the podcast. Let me listen to it. Let me go into Sunday, be the man, and then Sunday happens. So the road I went down was that the Bengals taking on the Bills would have been a big Josh Allen day, a big offensive explosion for the Bills. I did think that the Bengals, I thought the spread of 5.5 at the time was a little large, and the Bengals would probably cover that. The game would be tighter. I did not see that the Bengals would be full control, scoring 2 touchdowns in the first quarter. I was in the car coming back from somewhere, listening to the drive, and touchdown in the end zone, and I'm thinking, this is the opening drive of the game? No. 14-0, ridiculous. Bills did not come out to play. Josh Allen didn't have the game I thought he would. The big issue with Josh Allen throw. Josh Allen had 265 yards. I think I was like 15 yards away from his passing total, which I needed, and I don't know what they were doing. I didn't think there was enough urgency for the Bills. And you know what? When you have an issue where Stephon Diggs is waving his hands that he needs the ball, the Bengals have done a great job of cutting off like the supply lines. Because like every game that you see the Bills go to town, it's usually that hookup between Allen and Diggs, and that wasn't happening at all. It was snowing. This is Buffalo weather. They had DeMar Hamlin in the stands. Everybody's pumped for that. And they scored 10 points at home. So the Bengals got the job done. Good job, Bengals. But the Bills really screwed me from all counts, from Josh Allen's performance to the overall performance, because the 27 points that the Bengals scored, I took the over thinking that the Bills would be in the 20-plus range as well, and that didn't happen. So what's the follow here? I think you got to calm down. I think Josh Allen, although you could argue that, hey, Joe Burrow and Mahomes have clearly passed Josh Allen, because Josh Allen, after last year, probably was just behind Mahomes and maybe ahead of Burrow. He's still your top-tier quarterback. He's a franchise unicorn guy you're not going to find in this year's draft, or at least you're hoping to come close to Josh Allen. He's going to have a long career in Buffalo. Ride it out. You got to give him some more weapons. I think you tell me right now, Von Miller wouldn't have looked great in this game against the Bengals. They had no pass rush. Joe Burrow had hours back there. The Bills had 0 pass rush. But what do? You can't have a Von Miller at his age play 17 games and expect him to be fresh and injury-free leading into the playoffs. Do you bring him back and just hold off to last week of the season, bring him in and load management? I mean, what else? Can you do the whole Kawhi thing in the NBA and do load management that everybody's picked up on? Somehow, some way, the Von Millers, who are impact players, the Buffalo Bills are looking at the AFC Championship and Super Bowl. You got to plan out when you bring a player like that aboard, somehow making sure he's in those games and not getting surgery mid-season for a season-ending surgery. So that'd be interesting on how teams, or the Buffalo Bills specifically, handle that scenario. So screwed there. Not so much of a genius, am I? Not so much there. So going on to the Cowboys 49ers, I felt the opposite of what I felt what the Giants did with the Minnesota Vikings. I felt that the win and the performance of Dak Prescott had against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday night, I believed that was going to transition very well coming into the game against the 49ers. Was I right? You know I wasn't right. I was goddamn wrong. And looking at this, walking into this game, I thought Prescott would have a similar impact, whether it be with his legs, his arm, the rushing. And I thought Brock Purdy would eventually, okay, you know what? Hey, the jig is up. I am the Mr. Relevant last overall pick. At some point, the Cowboys D and Dan Quinn is going to expose me for the fraud I am, which I don't think he's a fraud, but I just think that the run, he might be over his head just a bit, but that obviously was not the case. This game ended 19-12. I had the Cowboys plus 3.5. Didn't cover. I had Dak Prescott over whatever yards at passing. That didn't happen. What do you have? He had 206 yards in a losing situation. Just didn't come through. I had over a yard and 2 passing touchdowns for Dak Prescott. Early touchdown for the Cowboys in the first half, and then nothing. Nothing at all. Prescott complete to Schultz, and that was it. Opportunities. Guess what he did when he was in the red zone? Picks. He threw 2 picks in this game, critical picks that you can't even look at and say, wow, he's 80% at fault, 40% at fault, 10% at fault. These were awful turnovers, especially in the red zone, where a veteran quarterback at his level is not seeing, the secondary and like he's not picking up the coverage some way, somehow. And he got picked. And the red zone, to me, pick was the biggest difference to why the 49ers are moving on and the Cowboys are not. And Dak Prescott is a guy that I think is a great, is a guy you want to cheer for. He's got a great attitude. He works hard. I hate the Cowboys, but I like to see Dak Prescott succeed. So when I'm criticizing him, it's nothing that I don't want to see him succeed. But the fact is, the way that game played out, and the number of chances the Cowboys have had in these first or second round ball games, like last year against the 49ers in the exact same scenario, that he's failing to come up against, elite competition and excel. I mean, we've seen games throughout the year where Prescott, after coming back from his thumb injury, was lighting up teams and the Cowboys offense was flying. And it just stalled. Like, it just stalled. I don't know if the Cowboys, because I think you obviously have to keep Dak Prescott and move forward with the contract he has. And honestly, unless you have another alternative out there, like let's say Lamar Jackson's available. Let's say for some reason you get Aaron Rodgers. It's not; these things are not going to happen. If they do, maybe you consider it. But Dak Prescott, you got to think, is going forward as the Cowboy quarterback. But you got to think of Kellen Moore, offensive coordinator. You have to shake up some sort of foundational piece to make the difference next year. That, obviously there's barriers this year for some reason where his performance couldn't take that next step. So I hope Dak Prescott gets back on it, but right now this is the wind out of the sails. And for those hockey fans out there, they will understand what I'm saying, is that the Cowboys right now are falling into, Toronto Maple Leaf territory where, you got Cowboys, one of the most popular teams in sports, but NFL, most valued franchise, just got a ridiculous fan base across North America. From a hockey perspective, the Leafs are the biggest NHL team, up and down between value with the Rangers, etc., of who's most expensive. However, the fan base is the biggest, but seem to always have high expectations, but zero results, and it's terrible. And Dak Prescott, you let me down. I'm sorry, but you did. And didn't help. Obviously, Tony Pollard is breaking his fibula, getting carted off. He's a big part of their offense, but I just didn't see the offense moving at all, even when Pollard was in the game. So Cowboys are tough. I think ownership, Jerry Jones, I don't know if he has the ability to recognize what needs to be done versus what his personal relationships and or I don't know what his strategy is. I don't get it, because I think there's some critical moves that need to take place to advance the Cowboys' chances of changing the result next year. And I don't know if he's going to do it. I got to imagine he's probably... what's their draft going to look like? We don't know. He's probably going to look for an explosive offensive player, which, maybe they do need. And man, could they have used an Amari Cooper? Amari Cooper with the Cleveland Browns wasted in a non-Deshaun Watson year for the Cleveland Browns could have been the difference in a game like this, where CeeDee Lamb over the top, Amari Cooper underneath, and you pissed it away and you couldn't make it happen, which I have no idea how you couldn't make that happen. But you didn't. So that's my, I'm not looking for excuses, but what I can tell you is I learned a lesson here, is that I got a lot to learn when it comes to bankroll management throughout a weekend, taking emotion out of some of the picks here that were made. And you got like football going on, you got hockey going on, you got basketball going on, you have, European soccer going on, and you start getting excited, but putting some wagers on there, and then you can go on a string where you lose 10 in a row. And it's just not smart business. So there's a lot to learn, and that's what I hope we do in this podcast. And I look at when this football season is over, we're going into the off season as far as trying to break down how do I come back in September to be a better NFL bettor, manage the bankroll for a longer period of time. Even looking at the college football season, there's value there, and I'm just not taking advantage of it. So how can I get better at it? I need to get better. That's just the way it is, and I hope we can do it together. But I'll leave the past in the past and move on to the future, which is the conference championships, which means once these games are done on Sunday, it's 2 weeks until the Super Bowl. And, these are the two biggest games left in the year until we get to the Super Bowl. And we got some pretty good matchups here. We have the San Francisco 49ers, a 2.5-point underdog, taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. And this 2.5 is a minus 105. It's brought to you by Bet365. The over-under is 46.5, minus 110. And you got to look at this game. I think you got to pick a side and run with it. I don't. It's hard to say for sure. I can't look at this game like, Philadelphia Giants. Of course, the Philadelphia Eagles. But, or, of course, the 49ers. Like, what do we got here? We got a Philly team that has been, rock solid until Jalen Hurts got hurt for a small period of time, where basically any challenge the Eagles are up to, even the loss against the Commanders, when Hurts was in, there was some, missed face masks and weird situations where, they lost, but did you really sour on the Philadelphia Eagles? I don't think so. 49ers, if you take Philadelphia, you're on the side that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to roll like they have all year, and they're going to look like they did against the Giants. And you're going to think that Brock Purdy maybe is coming up against a defense that's a big takeaway defense. I mean, his interception bet total here is minus 150 for an interception, which is, he was in the plus to not throw an interception, or to throw an interception against the Cowboys. That tells you what defense he's facing and what takeaway threat the Philadelphia Eagles are. And I think once they crack the Brock Purdy formula, I think it'll be all downhill. So I'm tending to lean and take the Philadelphia Eagles over the San Francisco 49ers. I like the 2.5. I like the Eagles to win by at least a field goal, so I'll put money on that. Also, just a note, I'm not going to be taking this, but if you're on the side of the San Francisco 49ers, take a look on the Bet365. There is a bet race to points. So, for example, if you pick the 49ers to be the first team to get to 10, you will win even money. If you get they get to 15, if that's the bet you took, you'll get plus 110. So $100 will pay you 110 profit, and so on. So interesting. If you like the 49ers, I think there's value there to look at race to whatever score. It's all in the pluses. And I think you might have a nice payday if you believe that the 49ers are the team that's going to come out on top here. I tend to think the Eagles will come out on top, so I'm not going to take that bet. Here's an interesting one. Now, think about, this goes for both the games on Sunday. Odds for the game to go to overtime is plus 1025 to plus 1025. So if you bet $10, even just $10, you get a profit of $102.05. Think about it. Last year, the Bengals and Chiefs went to overtime. Why wouldn't, or maybe we see value to sprinkle, $10, $20 on each of these games to go to overtime and see what happens? I mean, the odds are so high that the payoff's there. It's happened. And is it really that hard to see that one of these games might go to overtime? So think about it, and there might be value there. I'm not saying go, and that's a great bet. I'm just saying there's value there to worth thinking about and throwing a small wager on. Now, looking at some of the player props. Now, again, I'm going to tend to be more on the Philadelphia side because I do think that the Philadelphia Eagles will put up some points in the 49ers. Now, looking at the 49ers last week, they gave up one touchdown to Dalton Schultz. So I'm thinking, I'm going to go with the trend here. So you got two high-powered receivers, and Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown up top, and Dallas Goedert will be floating around in the middle. And I can see Jalen Hurts hitting Goddard for a touchdown. At any time touchdown for Dallas Goedert is plus 225. Oh, Schultz. Back to the Cowboy game. What if you watch the end of that game? He had two big brain lapses. One, receiving the ball less than 2 minutes. The clock will stop if you go out of bounds, unless you voluntarily go backwards out of bounds, which he did. One of the dumbest moves I've seen an NFL professional player make. You know what? Okay, it's a one-off. And then not to drag his foot on the next play for a pass that would have put him at least in Hail Mary range. You got to be a complete moron and not focused. I don't know where your head's at. It's got to be up your ass. So I had to go back to that. Sorry. Let me go back to this game. So Dallas Goedert plus 225, anytime touchdown. Davante Adams. I like over passing yards, 66.5 at minus 110. 5 of the last 7 weeks, he has gone over the total. Last week, not going over the total. But Davante Adams, he is a big-time player, and a couple receptions could easily surpass the 66.5. Like I said, 5 out of 7 of his last games, he actually hit that mark, so bank on it. Philadelphia over 24 points on Bet365. It's the three-way over, so I'm going to say plus 100. Plus 20 over 24, and just to have fun with this, one of the bet boosts that came up in this game. If Bet365 had these almost like prepackaged same game parlays that will show here's what the odds would be. So, for example, the bet boost I'm looking at is Philadelphia to win, A.J. Brown touchdown, and A.J. Brown to have 100 or more yards passing. It was at plus 650. They've boosted up to plus 700. It's like a packaged bet you can choose to jump on. If all those three items pay off, you get that win. So $100 would get you $700 profit. Now, the reason why I like this, I like Philadelphia to win, of course. A.J. Brown had a rough week. The only guy in the stadium was pissed off because he didn't get the ball. I got to feel that he's going to eat up some yards here. He's going to score a touchdown. I think that's the best value if you're going to take one of the bet boosters. But if you're on FanDuel, like I am, and you look at the same game parlay, and I like the same game parlay in FanDuel because you can use alternative totals like passing yards, etc. So I kind of like to do that, which I didn't see available in Bet365 when building a same game parlay. But for FanDuel, $100 to pay out $219.21 was Philadelphia money line. Both Purdy and Hurts to have 200 or more passing yards, which I think is doable. So that's a bet I do like. So if you like Philadelphia, you're on you're on the same boat as me. And again, take a little taste of maybe this game going to overtime. All right, last game before when this game's over, on the road to the Super Bowl. Cincinnati visits Kansas City, who's a -1. This was bouncing around this line, and a lot of it hinged on the health of Patrick Mahomes and that high ankle sprain. I mean, if you've been on Twitter, if you've been watching any program talking about, wow, like this comparing other players with similar injuries in their performance. Ryan Tannehill missed multiple games with a high ankle sprain. What do we got here? Then Patrick Mahomes looked like he was walking pretty good in a press conference, which I think is a contributor to why KC's back as the 1-point favorite. So the over-under here is also 48. Each time these teams meet, this is a rematch of last year's AFC Championship, which also went to overtime, and also, was over 48 points. So 27-24 was the same score as this year's game in Cincinnati, 27-24. So these teams put up points, and I do like the over on this one. I do like the idea that the Chiefs, here's how your thinking has to be. You either got to be sold that Patrick Mahomes is going to be effective and Patrick Mahomes-esque if you're going to take the over on this. If you got to buy into it, you got to go to bed, wake up, think, eat your cereal, think that he is going to be the guy. That ankle is not going to play the big factor. The others who are going to take Cincinnati think it will. So I'm going to be on the side of he's my boy. I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes. He's a superstar. He's a legend. He's considered the best quarterback in football. And sometimes they write stories in situations like this, a bum ankle, and he was able to overcome it, and he was able to put up this amount of yards in this performance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to go on that side of the story. So I'm going to go on the KC side of the story. They've dropped 3 straight to Cincinnati. They're going to hear that all week. I think Andy Reid's going to have time to be able to create an offense that caters to Patrick Mahomes' issue. They have a lot of weapons. So I still like the Kansas City Chiefs to put up points. Over 48 is definitely doable. And as the ball gets thrown, and I think we're going to have quicker scores than we've seen in the Cincinnati-Buffalo game and also the KC-Jacksonville game. So 48, I like it. I also like the Chiefs at -1, -110. Obviously, I just told you I was on the Mahomes train there. So let's go with that. I think there's value there, and I think obviously the ankle is the key here. They would normally be probably a 2.5, at least 3.5 point favorite if there was no injury to Mahomes, or at least it would have started off like that until maybe the sharps, the professionals, started wagering as the game approached. Some of the player props I do like. Anytime touchdown, 2 players, 1 from each team. Jamar Chase, 3 straight games with a touchdown. He's at +100. Why would I not throw some money on that? Travis Kelce. Now, this is a little different. And when I look at Travis Kelce, I think that's a no-brainer, right? Last game, he had 2 touchdowns. He's been kind of bone dry for touchdowns over the last previous games. But I got to think in a big game like this, especially within the red zone, that Travis Kelce will be a go-to target and at least get 1 touchdown. That's also even money as well. And again, I'm on the Patrick Mahomes bandwagon, and it's going to sicken me if Chad Henning is in this ball game because of a tweak to the ankle, and that is Patrick Mahomes over 279.5 passing yards. So I'm going to bank on it, and then it's almost like if you had a 20 at blackjack, and the dealer gets a 6th card 21. There was nothing you could do. You went with your gut. Actually, you didn't go with your gut. You went with the no-brainer to hold a 20, and you just the odds didn't go your way. So I'm looking at this Patrick Mahomes as my 20, and hopefully the Cincinnati Bengals will pull out a 21. Receptions. Jamar Chase. Back to Jamar Chase. I think, obviously, I like KC. It might be a losing cause, but I'd like the score to go up. So I like Jamar Chase to be in this ball game a lot. I like him to see the ball a lot. And the over-under for receptions is 6.5 at -135. 9 of his 11 games, he has gone over that total, 7 or more receptions. And the only 2 games where he had not in the last 11 were the last 2 against the Bills. Last game, a snowy, Bills where, the Bengals were in control and spreading the ball around. And then the game, obviously, with DeMar Hamlin in the medical emergency where the game didn't continue. So you can't really look at that. But, he's pretty much a lock to get at least 7 receptions. And I would take that one to the bank for sure. Mahomes also, if you're on the Mahomes bandwagon, and 2.5, over 2.5 passing touchdowns, +150. I like it. It's a stretch, but what the hell? Go for it. Longest field goal. Now, last week, I refrained from doing the field goal, and Buckner hits like a 50-plus yard field goal. You know what? I'm not going to do that this week. I'm going to take over 46.5, minus 110, longest field goal in the game. I got to believe it's going to come from the KC side, but I like it, and let's go with it. Again, overtime, plus 10.25, 112.5 on $10. You profit. Again, it's worth a sprinkle of $10. I didn't find any bet boosters on Bet365, but I looked at same game parlay on FanDuel for this game. I like the 40 alternative total at 42.5 over. Travis Kelce to have 60 yards plus passing or receiving yards, and Mahomes to at least have 225 passing yards. $100 profit of $101.69. So there you have it. There's my take on sporting news. Last week's debacle, horrid, pitiful show. I need to go back to the drawing board. Really maybe look at my franchise and look at the what I do in the draft, and trying to figure out what angles do I need to take next year going into a long season to come out on the winning side and not let emotion take over. So that is what was the story last week. Hopefully I've told you the story, what's going to happen this week. The pleasure of this podcast has obviously been all yours. So with that being said, over and out.